Hello, I'm a woman in my early 40s, and I'm an avid listener of your program. In life, there are often moments when you suddenly say something like this in person or hear it from someone else, that the world continues to develop and become more prosperous, but our lives become more and more difficult. Maybe that's why when I see people these days, I get thirsty for stories about so-called heroes and have a tendency to cheer. Among them, if you were to pick the most popular heroes, wouldn't they be the ones who are most closely related to our lives? Those are the firefighters who risk their bodies without hesitation to save a life. Like a lawyer who works hard for the rights of the weak. Or like our parents who sacrifice for their children despite all the hardships of life. Of course, there is one hero in my life who deserves my respect for the rest of my life. My father. He still leaves a deep respect in my heart. It's the story of the day my beloved mother passed away from a long illness, leaving behind me her only daughter, who had just entered middle school. To be honest, the story starts with memories of resentment towards my father. Was it because my dad was always out of town, not taking care of my mom's illness and neglecting us at home? It wasn't like that at all. My father loved my mother with the utmost sincerity, to the point where I, as his daughter, sometimes felt jealous. And although our family was not affluent, he was a model head of the family who was devoted to his family. However, seeing my father like that gave me an even greater sense of betrayal when I lost my mother overnight. From the moment my mother passed away and throughout her funeral, my father did not show a single moment of sadness. He greeted the funeral guests with a smiling face and even went to each of the mourners' tables to share a drink, as if he were drunk. That was the spring when I was just 13 years old. As a young kid, my father's actions were completely incomprehensible to me. "Dad, why are you like this? Isn't this a bit too much? Are you very angry with me, Susan?" Then how can I not be angry? Did you come to pay condolences at someone else's funeral? Even if it's a relative's funeral, it can't be this bad. This is the place where I say goodbye to my mom for the last time. But how can you smile like that in such a place? How can you even drink alcohol? Did you eat dinner? Dad was so distracted that I couldn't pay attention. Of course, you are out of your mind. You already had a few drinks just today, but I'm glad. It must have been very difficult, but you still have the spirit to be angry at your dad. Still, go to bed early today. Tomorrow is your mother's burial, so we have to wake up at dawn. I know, tomorrow is Mom's burial. Tonight is the last time I get to spend time with my dad and Mom. Dad, isn't that a waste of time? My mom isn't here anymore. Even if I want to see her, I can't. Even though I miss her, I can't hug her. Am I the only one who is sad? I feel like my heart will explode just thinking about that. But how could it be like that? A guest has arrived? Shall we say hello together? After speaking, my father welcomed the guest with a smiling face and shared another drink with her. In the end, I thought, could it be that my dad didn't love my mom? Was all the love he showed as an exemplary family man to me and my mother a lie? I ended up falling into doubt. My father, who had not seemed even remotely sad until the moment he placed my mother in her ossuary, finally broke down. Secretly, in the corner of the ossuary where no one was around, he was sobbing as he held on to Mr. Carpenter, a friend of his for decades. I feel so sorry for Anna. What should I do? She's still young. There are still so many things to enjoy in this world. There are so many things I haven't been able to do for her yet. If she leaves in vain like this, I feel so pathetic and helpless. What should I do? Get hold of yourself. Why are you doing this knowing that if you break down like this, Anna won't be able to leave in peace? I am Anna's first love. I am her husband. Okay, I understand. No, honestly, it would be a pain that would be difficult for me to even imagine. But you've been holding it in well so far, so just cry in front of me now. Instead, let's overcome and be courageous again in front of Susan. You are Susan's father. She's still young and she only has you now. Yes, even when it's hard, I have to smile. Even when I'm sad, I have to be resolute. Because I am Susan's dad. As I secretly watched my dad sobbing for a while longer, I realized only then that my dad was just as sad and devastated as me. He had to endure it because he was a husband and a father. It was a courtesy to convey his sincere gratitude as her husband to the mourners. The mourners who made the difficult visit to commemorate my mother's final journey greeted with a smiling face and offered them drinks. On the one hand, it took bravery for him to be there and be strong for his young daughter to lean against, as she had lost her mother. Until the moment my mother left forever, the saddest person in the world was my father himself. Thanks to him, I realized how foolish the small resentment I had harbored towards my father when I was young. But my dad's awesomeness didn't end there. By the time I got used to my mother's absence, I came across my father's diary by chance, which contained a tearful letter to my mother. "Anna, it's okay. You don't have to worry. You're gone, but I'm still here. The love you couldn't convey to Susan, I'll convey it all on your behalf. I'll become a strong father so that Susan doesn't feel empty without her mother. I'll try my best to become a stronger adult. I promise with everything I have, my love, Anna and Susan's mom." My dad did that for me. He gave me such loving affection that I could confidently say that I hardly felt the absence of my mother, but he also did not spare me strict discipline at times. In the meantime, he started his own business because he was worried that I would grow up feeling financial difficulties. And after doing his best to the point where 3 bodies were not enough, he became the owner of a full-fledged successful business. So for me, my father, even if I lived my whole life with respect, with that deep love he gave me, is the #1 hero whom I'll never be able to repay in full. Then one day, a second love came to my father. He dated seriously with a quiet but very nice lady. When I first heard the news, I honestly felt a little disappointed. I kept thinking about my mother who had to leave us so early. I, of course, did not object to my father's new romance because it was a good thing. Still, there was nothing I could do about my complicated feelings. But the real problem came from my in-laws. It was my mother-in-law, who had nothing to do with my dad's business, who opposed my father's new relationship. My mother-in-law said that the first reason she objected was because of the social prestige of my husband, who was about to be appointed as a professor at the time. Let me ask you just one question. How small is the university's social circle? Do you know how conservative they are? Well, I haven't experienced it myself, but the professors I saw while attending college weren't that bad. You see, the world is not as easy as you think, girl. Especially when it comes to the relationship between a student and a professor. This is a difficult situation for my son who is about to become a professor. Being a professor is a position of great social status and responsibility. From that perspective, when they hear that his father-in-law is dating a woman and may even remarry, they won't look at my son kindly. They will look down on him. It's a big scandal. So what you're saying, mother, is my father's love life an obstacle? Of course, the more people know, the more conservative they become. Furthermore, the people who make the final decision on hiring your husband as a professor are all older and conservative professors. Even if it were me, I would eliminate him right away. I can't believe this. It seems like you are the one who doesn't know much about the world. This is not the Middle Ages where remarrying was forbidden. Who in the world would find fault with my father-in-law for dating or remarrying? Moreover, no one is interested in the personal stories of someone not directly related to their family. Be quiet. Go and talk to your dad right away and stop him from his dating. Unless you plan to repay the money I spent educating my son to become a professor. His dating? Get your words straight from the start. If anyone heard you, they would think my father is having an affair. The whole time I was arguing with her and turning away, I couldn't understand her complaints at all. It's not that my father was dating someone strange, but as a middle-aged man and a woman who have both lost their spouses and have been single for a long time, they are seeking comfort in each other's loneliness. Was it really necessary to oppose their relationship? Who gave her the right to do so? Moreover, even though I had complicated feelings as a daughter, it was not my place to stop my father's new relationship. And my mother-in-law was clearly a third party. But why was she so against it? If she was going to oppose it, she should at least give a good and understandable reason. Could my father's romantic relationship be a reason for disqualification from my husband's appointment as a professor? Was that the only reason? She was just plain strange. And the strangeness didn't end there. My husband, who is usually a very nice person, showed a very unexpected attitude after the day his mother and I argued. He was also completely opposed to my father's new relationship. The reason he gave was, my father-in-law is also very shameful. No, at that age, what is the glory he is seeking to have a new relationship and start dating now? Are you talking about that too? Did you and your mother talk to each other without my knowledge? What do you mean? There's such a thing as my position. So, what is the position? Since we're talking about this, let's see if you can be honest about it. Honestly, that's true. At that age, what if we should at least have a child? Who will be responsible to take care of the baby and raise the child? In the end, it will just end up being you and me having a hard time. These days, it costs so much to raise a child. It costs at least $100,000. Do you know what you're saying is very strange? Is my dad someone like a minor? Definitely he's an adult. He's much older than you and me. And your father-in-law is a man with ample financial capabilities. Even if it's not for economic reasons, my father is more loving and wise than anyone in the world. My life proves that. So what I'm saying is that even if it were your younger brother, if he were born, it would be your father-in-law's responsibility. What about my dad's money? When I asked the question out loud, my husband seemed embarrassed and kept his mouth shut. There was an awkward silence for a moment, and I, unable to bear the silence, continued the conversation. As for me, if my mother-in-law got a new father-in-law, I would give him my blessing if she falls in love, gets married, and even if she says she wants to have a baby. Why? Because that's her life. Because she deserves to be respected as a woman before she is your mother and my mother-in-law. The same goes for my dad. I don't know what will happen after he dates her, but as his daughter and his son-in-law, we need to respect my dad's decision. But I'm against it? Is that right? If that's the case, then that means you're not the kind of person who has a big heart to begin with. It's because I'm embarrassed. Why do I have to live with my new mother-in-law who appeared out of nowhere? The conversation is over. Now that I've seen the true nature of you and your mother, let's reconsider our marriage. That day, I packed my bags and was heading to my dad's, but I left my wallet behind. Inside my wallet was my employee ID card, which was required to enter and exit my company building lobby. After thinking about it for a while, I headed home again to get my wallet, despite my embarrassment. After boldly walking out on my husband, I felt embarrassed. However, in less than 2 hours, my husband called his mom to come over to our house and they started fighting. What if I get divorced like this? It's okay. The way I see it, she can't afford to divorce you. It's because you didn't see her expression when she left. It looked like she was really angry. If things continue like this, I might end up getting divorced. Wouldn't that mean I wouldn't be able to receive even a penny of my father-in-law's inheritance? The moment I heard about the inheritance, I got goosebumps all over my body. As people commonly say, it gave me the shudders. The conversation between my mother-in-law and my husband continued without them even realizing I was there. It was much more shocking than I could have imagined. Wake up. Do you think I spent a penny or two to make you a professor? Anyway, now that you can't become a professor, I'll have no choice but to suck up every bit of Susan's dad's money. And later, when he dies, you can use the inheritance to make up for it. So why did you, so close to being appointed as a professor, have no fear and drive drunk? Oh, why does that story come up here again? What's important right now is the story about my father-in-law. You can't continue to object to things like this, dating and blindly oppose it. What if I don't object? Now that your wife is an only child, all of the family's assets will become yours in the future. But what if your father-in-law remarries? At that time, the first heir will not be your wife, but that woman who marries your father-in-law. Even so, if they have a baby, the remaining inheritance may have to be split in half. Then what should I do? If you keep opposing it, I'll end up getting divorced. But if I leave my father-in-law alone, I'll end up, just like you said, rather than living off of his money. It's complicated in one way or another. For now, I'll meet with your wife again tomorrow. If she won't dare raise her voice loudly in front of her mother-in-law, she'll be like a mouse. What about my father-in-law? Should we at least frame and stop the woman he's dating as a tramp, like a bar girl who is a gold digger, and prevent her from dating or marrying my father-in-law? These days, there's a lot of talk about whether it's a composite photo or a real thing. Is there anyone around you who knows a lot about computers? Oh yes, there is. There's one among my college mates, but will he try to do something dangerous like this? Tell him you'll pay a lot of money, unconditioned that he keeps his mouth shut for the rest of his life. What language in the world can fully capture my anger and feelings of betrayal at the time? My teeth were chattering and my whole body was shaking from feeling furious. Those weren't enough. However, if I started pouring out swear words indiscriminately, even if I tried to use all the swear words I knew, they weren't enough. I just listened to that story and quietly left the house. The feeling was as if I wanted to rush in and turn things upside down. But the reason I didn't do that was because even if I overthrew the situation, it wouldn't satisfy even half of my anger. I wanted to give those two greedy trash a true education in life with a heavier and more powerful taste of medicine. I stayed with my father for a while, completely cutting off contact with my ex-in-laws, and spent my days fuming to find the best true bitter lessons to give them. My father never asked me anything. He just gave me strength with these words. Susan, even if the whole world abandons you, your dad will always be on your side. So feel free to think about it. If you are worried and the moment comes when you need your dad, feel free to ask for help. This dad is your strongest shield and strongest word. But even with my father by my side, my worries grew deeper. Because the shock was so great, I had a hard time coming to terms with it. But the person who caught me was, unexpectedly, the lady who was in a serious relationship with my father. She seeped into me like a pure white painting being diluted in clear water. But no matter how clear the water and how white the paint, when the two are mixed, it is bound to show, right? That was the case between the lady and me. Of course, my intention was to respect my father's life. I agreed with the relationship between the two, but because I too am my mother's child, I couldn't help but feel some awkwardness. Because she replaced my beloved mother's side and stood next to my father, she seemed to be aware of my discomfort. I must be making you uncomfortable, right? Can I be honest with you? She nodded and I continued, actually, it's a bit complicated. It's not that I don't respect my father's life, and it's not that I dislike you, but I'm honestly still not sure if you love my father as much as my late mother did. Maybe I don't love him as much as your late mother did. She looked at me with understanding and replied, since I have lived longer than you have, I have had more time to love your father. But I promise to always love and respect him, just as I did your mother. It seems like no matter how much time heals and dulls, the person who left when there was nothing we could do about the person we loved, we could not fully convey our feelings for our deceased mother. So I understand you very well now. I too have lost someone I loved. I couldn't say a word, and so I'm not gonna ask you to acknowledge me. I won't lie and say that I love your dad as much as your mother. Then why on earth are you with my father? After your mother, Susan, and your dad's parents who gave birth to him, I'm the person who loves him the most in the world. For a moment this thought occurred to me. The romanticist's father met the romanticist's wife very well. If only there was one person left in this world to fill the void left by my mom, that must be that lady, not me. After making up my mind, I went straight to my mother's ossuary and boasted about it, like the diary of promises my father wrote to my mother. You know, Mom, finally, Dad found a good person. She may not love Dad as much as you, Mom, but she loves Dad just as much as you, Mom. I'm okay now, too. I feel like I can bless my dad's new life freely. So, Mom, you can rest well now without worrying about anything. You've been worrying about Dad a lot in heaven all this time, right? And that night, she appeared in my dreams for the first time since she died. My mom, who appeared very relaxed, smiled brightly and blessed my dad's new life. She was worried that my dad would be a widower for the rest of his life. But now that the burden has eased, please be sure to say thank you to the lady. As expected, my mom was such a wonderful person that my dad fell in love. But at that time, I couldn't tell my dad about my mother's words of gratitude. My father suffered from acute appendicitis and had an emergency surgery. My father, who was quite a bit older, recovered quickly under the devoted care of the lady. Seeing them like that reminded me of my mother and father whispering their love. That was the moment when I deeply accepted her as my stepmother. But a registered mail was delivered to my father, who had just been discharged from the hospital. It was a photo taken by my mother-in-law and my husband while secretly following my stepmother. It was a fake photo created by combining photos of a promiscuous bar girl. They wanted to ruin my future stepmother's relationship with my father by falsely accusing her of being a tramp and a gold digger, so they could take advantage. They could take advantage of the fact that I'm his only daughter by stealing my father's inheritance and living off of his money, eventually taking all of it in the future. My future stepmother was so shocked that she almost fainted, so I had to protect the two of them. Dad, no. Father and mother, don't believe them. All of these photos were manipulated by my in-laws. It's a composite photo, and it's clearly a false accusation, a libel. I know what a wonderful person my mother is, second only to my father in this world. Because I know and believe best. I'm sorry, Miss Susan. What did you just say? I said it was a composite photo. No, not that composite photo. Before that. Now please speak more comfortably. Where in the world is a mother who calls her daughter Miss Susan? My father said, he's my strongest shield and sword. Not anymore. From now on, I'll be your sword and shield to protect you two. A few days later, the day of revenge finally dawned. My father and I first called my mother-in-law and my husband, making sure they didn't notice anything. I sent a text message saying that I wanted to sort out my inheritance and thanking them for catching the gold digger early before we almost lost all our money. They got excited and came running. When they arrived, there was my father, me, and Mr. Carpenter, all dressed up in suits. On the day of my mother's funeral, he was the one my father held in the corner of the ossuary and sobbed. He had been my dad's friend for decades. My mother-in-law and husband thought Mr. Carpenter, dressed in a suit, was a lawyer who would notarize the will. They became flirtatious and excited. The first to speak was my mother-in-law, asking about my father's total assets, including company shares and personal property. I asked if it was important to know how much my father's wealth was, and if her appendectomy went well, and how her health was. She was being blatant without saying anything. Only then did my mother-in-law, with a startled expression, seem worried about any problems with the inheritance. She left in a big fuss. Why? Because I'm an only child. All of my father's assets will ultimately go to your son? Or maybe you want to make your son a great college professor and give back all the money. Did you spend all that money on his education by taking advantage of my dad's finances? What? Why are you suddenly bringing this up? It seems like you're trying to deny it, so let's discuss it openly now. I also asked Trey, my husband, did you drink and drive? Did you miss out on becoming a professor because of that? Are you drunk? Why are you suddenly accusing an innocent person? Don't lie. I'm saying this because I've heard it all. Why do you keep repeating this? I've never done anything like that. Are you sure? On the day I left the house and suggested we reconsider our marriage, what were all the stories you and your mother were discussing in my bedroom? I don't know. We never did that, right, Mom? Please be honest. It will save you and your mom from being shamed here. Because it's the only way. I said, no, man. Do you have any proof? Is there any evidence? Of course not. That day, the feeling of betrayal was so deep in my bones that I didn't even think about recording it. It was only later that I tried to obtain a copy of your drunk driving record and found out that it was illegal under the Personal Information Protection Act. See? You're making a fuss for no reason. Instead, he just looked at me. Instead of having no evidence, there is a will. At that moment, the will that my father had written in advance was presented to my mother-in-law and husband. As soon as they read the will, they were shocked. It stated that upon my father's death, half of his assets would be donated to a child care facility for children who have lost their parents, and the other half would be gifted to me. My stepmother also readily agreed. She wasn't with my father for his money. And one more thing. There are also divorce papers here. Of course, this time I also attached photos as evidence. You've been having fun all this time without me knowing, haven't you? Next, I threw some photos at my husband and mother-in-law. As soon as that happened, my husband couldn't help but be shocked again and started to tremble. There were photos that clearly showed my husband entering and exiting bars and motels with other women. Oh no, this is not me, honey. No. Father, this is not me. Trust me, Mom. This is all a sham. These are composite photos, right? Are you sure these are all composite photos? Just like the photo you took to frame my stepmother as a bar girl? My husband looked shocked. I heard that one of your college mates is good at computers. Do you think I came here without knowing that you made a composite photo of my stepmother and sent it to my dad's house on the condition that he kept quiet about it for the rest of his life? Surely, did you hear everything up to that point? Why? Now that you are concerned, do you think you should confess? The way you present yourself and the way you live in the world are completely different. You are so ignorant about proper life in this world. Then my mother-in-law, who had been observing the situation, started to become agitated. Okay, my son lost his job as a professor due to drunk driving. So what? How innocent are you? How dare you insult someone in this manner just because you have money? I'm gonna sue you all. It's an insult. Well, it may be difficult to sue us for that. I don't think. If I can't file a complaint, I'll just place a big advertisement in the newspaper that a certain small business owner abuses money by stalking and taking pictures of innocent people and creates composite photos of them, falsely claiming evidence in a divorce. Let's see if that business can continue to thrive. Even if you don't have the right mindset, let's talk honestly. We've never stalked or taken photos of your son, but simply used the photos of your son that I had to show as proof that photos can be manipulated. But you are the ones who actually took pictures of my future stepmother, didn't you? She looked taken aback by that. And at this point, should I tell you a fun fact? I'm referring to the person who was with us earlier. He's not the lawyer who will notarize the will. He's a newspaper reporter who came to help us at the request of my father, who has been our family's best friend for decades. Be careful what you say, because we are the ones holding the power over your fate. The reporter and I have already decided on the headline of the newspaper article. The world of illegal photo manipulation techniques. Is it okay like this? How is it? Don't you already get a feeling that it's going to be entertaining just from the title? So what do you want to say? What on earth do you want from us? First, calmly sign the divorce papers. Second, leave my life and that of my parents forever. Well, if you can't do that, why don't you try to embarrass us in the neighborhood and have a proper mud fight? I'm confident. My mother-in-law thought for a long time in silence. She then coaxed my husband into signing divorce papers and immediately ran out together. I said my last words to their ugly backs. I won't even sprinkle salt on your wound. Anyway, your life ended the moment you got drunk and lost your professorship. Finally, the whole incident came to an end. That's a story that's been around for several years now. Afterward, my father and stepmother had a happy wedding with the blessings of everyone around us. They are now relying on each other for their sorrow and filling the void of the once lost spouse. They are enjoying their married life. Thanks to my victory over my former mother-in-law and ex-husband, I was able to smoothly take over the responsibility of being the head of the household from my father. It was a day when my hero, my father, celebrated his glorious retirement ceremony. It was also a moment for me to remind myself of my promise to protect them both, just as my father protected me throughout my life. I actually don't know what happened to my ex-mother-in-law and my ex-husband. They don't even deserve my attention. However, according to some news I heard, my ex-husband's life was completely ruined. In today's era of heightened awareness of drunk driving, the appointment of a professorship could never happen. He was trying to get a job at various private tutoring academies, but even that did not seem to be feasible. Parents are very keen on keeping track of their children's tutors. Before long, there were rumors that he had been rejected for a professorship due to drunk driving. Of course, he got fired every time. If a person lives like a human being, the future will be better. A person who is like an enemy makes me realize the fact again. Life is so fun. Thank you for listening to my story. Always take care of your health. Have a nice day. Please cheer for me and write your comments of wisdom in the comments section. Pressing like and subscription is a big help to me. Take care.